Hi guys, welcome back to Coast Property Buyers. We're episode 3 of our podcast, and today with Simon Thomas and your host Jase Jobson, we want to talk about something that's a bit of a hot topic.
A lot of people ask us about this topic, Jase, so I think it's good timing that we're talking about it.
Absolutely, and that buzzword is off-markets.
Off-market properties.
So today we'll discuss in a little bit of detail around some different terminology that we use with buyers when sourcing property. A lot of the times people come to us and say, how many properties do you have on your off-market list? And we can have anything between 2 to 250 properties on our off-market list at any given time across the coast. Now, what they inherently think from time to time is, my perfect property is on that list. So let's speak about what an off-market is. And the different type of vendor that chooses to engage an agent and to sell the property off market.
That's a really good segue and good intro, Jase, about what is an off-market property. And there's probably a different understanding in the marketplace about what an off-market property is, because part of what we're going to talk about today is also pre-market, and there is a big difference between off-market and pre-market. So an off-market property is a property that's introduced to us or to the market. Different with the market because you've got to have a very, very deep and a good close relationship with an agent for an agent to ring you and say, by the way, I know you're looking around this part of the coast, I've got 3 off-markets coming up. That's the benefit of using a buyer's agent. But an off-market property is a property that's not readily available, it's not being advertised, there's no open homes, there's no signage, there's no advertising, there's no real commitment for that seller to come to market. However, they're happy to sell off-market, obviously, without the hoo-ha and the fuss and the marketing.
So they're not publicly advertised. It's not on realestate.com, there's not a signboard out the front, and there's no open homes on the Saturday. So that property is officially off-market, and the agent is selling it through his or her channels to prospective professionals within the industry or other buyers. So they may have had a recent sale in the street, they've got a very similar property, they speak to a potential vendor there. Look, if you've got a buyer, bring them through, but we don't want to do open homes, or we don't want to take it to market.
If it's convenient for us and there's no fuss, there's nothing we really need to do about getting our home ready for sale and getting professional photography done, we're interested.
Let's discuss those different types of vendors, because it either works for or it can work against you trying to secure a property that's off market. So some off markets that I've explored, the agent has approached the vendor and the vendor has said, my property's only worth X, but I'd sell it if you could get me Y. Property's worth 1.5, but if you can bring me a $2 million buyer, I'll sell. They're an unrealistic, unmotivated vendor.
And they will be very difficult to negotiate with because they've got no sales evidence, no data that would indicate their property's worth what they want. And therefore, you're really fighting an uphill battle, even though as buyer's agents, we do the thorough due diligence, which we've talked about in the previous podcast. And we come up with a figure and we actually say to our client, look, the great news, this is an off-market opportunity and there's no competition or very little competition on this property. However, the seller's unrealistic. And we need to move on.
We found the right property, but we found the wrong seller.
Correct.
So within that, you can have agents that do speak with potential vendors and they're able to help align them or not. Or if they can't identify a motivation for them to be moving, it becomes really, really challenging. Other times you can actually just have very private people.
Correct.
I mean, primarily the ones that we purchase off market, we don't want the fuss, or, sometimes there's really challenging circumstances where it's a separation. They don't really want the street to know, they don't want the open homes, they don't want the signboard, but they do need to sell, and their motivation is quite high.
Correct.
Motivation's high, they're realistic, they've got to head into a different direction. We've purchased some stunning property in some really, really highly sought after streets. And it was simply due to the seller's circumstance that we unearthed that opportunity and have purchased the property not only to suit the buyer's brief, but we've also bought it really well.
And sometimes timing, and as Jay said, circumstance. We have bought off-market properties and the sellers have been very appreciative of the fact that we need a 90-day settlement. And our clients are happy to facilitate that. And that's actually helped get the transaction over the line, because that means, gosh, we haven't got to move out in a month. As you say, it may unfortunately be a separation and both the husband and the wife or the family need to find separate accommodation by 2. and they say 90-day settlement would, yeah, we'll sell off market, Mr. or Mrs. Agent. However, we really need a minimum of 90 days. We talk to our client about that, and that's how it comes together. We can facilitate a 90-day settlement. They say, better we sign.
We're ready to go.
The offer's acceptable.
Yeah. Or we'd love to be out there inspecting properties in the market to purchase something, but we're terrified of being homeless.
Correct.
30-day settlement, we'll give you a rent back for 60 days.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That comes at a cost. That means that we're going to negotiate quite strong because we're well and truly ticking a lot of boxes that are favourable to the seller.
There's a number of different reasons. Some people just choose to keep those reasons to themselves, and we get that question a lot, but that's some of the reasons why people decide to sell off market.
Agents love to run off market strategies prior to taking it to market.
Correct.
There's some, very active off-market selling agents, and at the moment that they engage, they'll give us a buzz and say, hey, have you got anybody for this? And when the stars do align, we get out there and purchase them. They're about selling property. That's the priority for some agents.
Yep.
It's the priority for all the agents. Obviously, they all would like to be able to sell the property and get the best result possible for their vendor, but different strategies. Different agencies love to take things to auction. Other agencies love to sell off market.
Yeah.
So there is a few different drivers in that sector.
The benefit of using a buyer's agent, guys, is that when we get a new client that is onboarded, they've engaged us to start sourcing for them, the client gives us specific suburbs. This is ideally where we'd like to buy. We've already thought of 4 or 5 or 6 agents that may have off markets. As Jase said in his opening comments, we have a very comprehensive list of off market properties, some of which come to market, some of which are actually even withdrawn from off market. In fact, I spoke to an agent earlier today about an off market that was entered on our off market list last year. Those sellers have now decided we're not sellers.
Yep.
We're not even a seller off market, so that's no longer an opportunity. So we know the agents to contact that would generally have those opportunities available. In fact, I spoke to another agent who's very prominent in a suburb we're looking to buy in for a client. He's got 3 pre-market properties.
Yep.
And we haven't talked about the difference between pre-market and off-market, but that's an opportunity for a client that we only have because of that relationship.
How many agents do we have in our database?
It's probably 700 to 800.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So it's a lot of contacting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's the difference between an off-market and a pre-market?
So an off-market we've already talked about. So what a pre-market, guys, is a property that is getting ready to come to market. Form 6 has been signed. There is a timing and a strategy involved that the agents helped the owner with, and that may be decluttering, it might be staging, it might be a tenant moving out, it might be some painting, some landscaping, tidying it up. It is getting ready for sale.
Yeah.
So it is going to come to market. So pre-market means it's an opportunity to buy a property before it comes to market.
Yeah, it's in the pre-marketing stage. And I couldn't count the amount of properties that we've had access to, gone out and explored it, been invited along to the photo shoot even. It's ticked all the boxes. We've purchased it. The first open home is on Saturday. And buyers come through and it's under contract. They say, how could it be?
It's only just, it went live Thursday night.
Yeah, and it's like, Friday. How is it?
How can that happen?
Yeah.
Like, we've already had opportunity to actually view that property, do the video walkthrough for a client. In fact, I remember years and years and years ago when I first became a buyer's agent, I had a couple from New Zealand. They wanted to buy an acreage property. We found them a great opportunity on the outskirts of Buderim. I actually did a live. They had a very tight timeline, this couple, and the property was being painted. And the client pretty much said, tell everyone, brushes down.
Stop painting.
We want to, and we couldn't tell them there and then. They actually didn't like the colour. And they really wanted to buy the property. So we bought that property within a couple of days and moved over from New Zealand. And so that was a pre-market purchase. So there's a classic example of a home getting ready for sale because it's getting painted.
I had one where they were doing fencing. They said, what fence are they going to build? It's going to be a timber fence. How much have they been quoted? They've been quoted 12 grand. Great. We'll buy the property at the price that we're happy with, less 12 grand. And that's what we did because they wanted colour bond. Great. Do that.
There's an example of pre-market opportunity. Next question, how do we find off markets?
Sourcing them.
Sourcing them. How do we source them?
Yeah. It's laborious.
Yeah.
It requires time. I know it takes up the bulk of the 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, if we're not sourcing on a Saturday. But it is quite literally speaking with the agents that we know are active within that particular area and speaking to them about upcoming properties. Now, we do get everyday agents that reach out to us and say, I'm going to a listing presentation tonight, just wondering if you've got a buyer that's 4, 2 and 2 with a pool, mid ones that would look to buy something in Palmwoods. Yep, we do. Fantastic. They'll go out there and do the listing presentation, pick up the listing, and give us a buzz and say you're booked to come through tomorrow at 12.
Form 6 has been signed. I'm on my way back to the office. Yep. It's not going to market for 2 weeks. That's a pre-market, guys. I just think it's just important, as I said, when Jase just mentioned, there's a lot of background work that we do to create the magic, to create the opportunities, to create the purchase opportunities for clients, is that when we ring an agent because we've just onboarded a new client, we don't ring them and say, what have you got on the market? It's like, what have you got coming up?
Yeah.
Like, what's bubbling?
What have you done a listing presentation?
The people that are listening to this that are doing this themselves, you just don't have the time or the resources to do that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the benefits of using a buyer's agent.
One of our team members, Jeff, was doing a discovery last week, and when he was speaking with the buyer, he said, have you seen any properties that have come to market that you would have purchased? And they mentioned a property and said, yeah, we would have bought this one, but when we saw it online, it was under contract and we'd bought it pre-market. And Jeff said, you wouldn't have seen the listing and the open home because the first time that it came onto realestate.com was for the agent to announce that it was sold. So unfortunately that one would have suited, but that's pre-market, and that's what pre-market looks like. So there's that style of professional that reaches out, as well as us doing our sourcing and actively engaging with those professionals to be able to access those property. And we also have for sale by owners reach out in regards to if we've got a buyer for their property.
This is an important topic. So direct vendor contact is what Jase is referring to. And we do, I wouldn't say it's a regular occurrence, but like, you should be aware that as buyer's agents, we get calls directly from sellers. I'm a seller. I've got a property that I want to sell, and I don't necessarily want to use an agent, or I'd rather not use an agent for whatever reason. Maybe past experience, which is probably unfair to a lot of agents out there, but they've got their own reasons. Would you have a buyer for my property? And that's a conversation we're always very upfront about. We obviously say we appreciate the call. We have an off-market list. Yes, we've always got active buyers in different parts of the coast. I've got a general idea, as does Jase, about what we're sourcing, what we're looking for as a team. We talk about our client's brief every week, and if it changes, we communicate that with the team. But we always make one thing clear, Jase, and that is that when a seller contacts us directly, if we do have a client or a buyer that's interested in that particular type of property, we're very upfront and we say, look, our client is the buyer.
Yep.
We are looking at your property through a buyer lens. We're not going to appraise the property. We're not going to come out and tell you what your home's worth. That's a sales agent's job if you want to avoid using a sales agent. If it does suit a buyer, we're buying it and we're representing the client. Who's our buyer? You're not our client.
I went and inspected a property in Bly a little while ago for sale by owner, and she'd given me her ideal number on what she'd like to sell the property for. And just from the time that it took me to inspect it, do a video walkthrough and have a bit of a chat around our circumstance, established that she'd probably take about 70 grand less than what she was initially providing me with some price guidance. And the property didn't suit. And when I returned to her and said, look, the property doesn't quite tick the boxes, can I give you some feedback? She said, yeah. And I said, look, I believe that I'd be able to purchase your property at this number. She said, my God, how did you know that? How did you work that out? I said, well, my job's to be able to establish what I can secure the property for and to negotiate really, really well. Why haven't you chosen to engage an agent? She said, I don't want to pay their fees. Okay, well, we're $70,000 difference here. My goodness, my recommendation to you is to engage a professional to negotiate on your behalf and protect you. I've never had luck purchasing for sale by owner. That's just my personal experience. I find that they're normally a little bit ambitious.
Through our professional contacts, I was put in contact with a for sale by owner. I had investors from Brisbane. I inspected it with Jase. We did a video walkthrough, presented it to the client online. They liked it. They were excited about it. It wasn't an area that they would have considered. Long story cut short, they drove up the following weekend. We inspected it. The owners did a fantastic job at presenting it. So we had an opportunity to buy that property sub $1 million. In fact, I think they were happy to take somewhere around 930, 940 from memory. My clients decided against it. It was on a main arterial road that carried a bit of traffic. Even though there were tenants going into the property, they decided against it. So that was a pre-market, well, it was an off-market, kind of a pre-market, because they were going to, and I said, you need to list it with an agent, go to market. my client has said, no, thank you so much for the opportunity to view it and put it in front of our clients. And they subsequently sold that property for 1.1.
Yeah.
So we could have bought a property sub 950.
Yep.
And it was clearly worth more, but they were happy without agents, without marketing, without timing, without all the getting the house ready for all the reasons we've mentioned. So there's an example of if my clients had said yes, they would have had a lot of equity in that property by the time it settled.
Yeah, I've got renovators that we've purchased on behalf of. They've improved the property, and I said, I can pop back and have a look. And they're like, we don't want you buying it.
Because we know how
we know what you're going to do. We know we prefer the general public to buy it.
Correct.
And they did. And, and they got much more than what I was anticipating to spend on the property.
Data is power. We look at data a lot. I think, as I said, we've mentioned in a previous podcast, without data, without insight, without due diligence, you really don't have the ammunition you need to make informed decisions.
Yep.
So the pre and off market certainly come into play there. So it's often back to what we talked about before, even if the off market opportunity presents itself. Feet on the ground, let's be realistic here, let's be grounded. It is an off market opportunity for our client.
Yep.
But we see the value here.
We purchased one in Golden Beach. It was withdrawn from market. The agent had, done his very best to get the result for the sellers, and the sellers didn't quite align the right buyer to their property. They struggled a little bit during the campaign, and they said enough open homes, we're done.
Yeah.
So the agent, when I started to source, and sourcing is what we call searching
for property.
And stock is properties.
Yep.
So when we were sourcing for stock, I spoke to the agent and he said, let me revisit this one that's withdrawn because the property is perfect. We don't use that word very often, but it had everything that the buyer needed and was within budget. So he returned to the vendors and said, a buyer's agent has inquired on the property.
I know you decided not to sell.
Yeah.
The timing doesn't suit you. However,
a professional buyer's agent has inquired on your property with a buyer brief that matches the description of your listing. Do you mind if I bring a buyer's agent through? They said, do we have to? He said, you don't have to tidy the place up. Sometimes I get out to properties and they're in the middle of a renovation and you're tripping over ladders and buckets and paint and all that sort of thing. So we went through the property, it suited, we bought it when we purchased it. And it was withdrawn from market. Often we'll have price reduction or we'll have return to market. So when we recently purchased, it had gone under contract and we inquired. There was a huge amount of interest. There was a multiple offer that initially secured the property. However, that buyer had a change in circumstance and subsequently didn't proceed with the purchase. And the agent called us first and said, before I consider doing an open home, where you guys are, said, yep, it suits, let me get out there. And we went out there and purchased the property. So again, all that people see when it's online is that the property is sold, not realising that there was actually a return to market property.
Yep. Let's talk about leveraging the team. So we can only talk about our own business and how Coast operate. The benefit of having a large team, Jase, is that there's any number of the team that are out and about. I mean, we've got the team, Jase and I are in here doing the podcast today, but there's the rest of the team are out talking to agents, sourcing property. So the team is aware of everyone's brief. So the benefit of having a large team, and we cover a massive area. Sunshine Coast is a big area, a lot of suburbs, a lot of different regions, different property types, you name it, different price points, everyone knows that. So the benefit of a team is when you engage a buyer's agent, but particularly Coast, you are engaging Jase as your buyer's agent or Simon as your buyer's agent, whoever it might be, but the team are actually behind the scenes working for you. So an agent that I haven't spoken to for 6 months rings Shane or rings Jase or rings Josh or rings Tiana and says, or rings Jeff and says, have you got anyone for blah, blah, blah? Actually, that sounds like one of Jase's clients.
Yep.
So the benefit of having a team is that you've got a lot of soldiers in the field, in the trenches, so to speak. A lot of boots on the ground. Yep. So it helps the client.
It does. And it's a collaborative approach. Unsure as to whether or not other buyers agencies that also have a team work in the same manner, but we don't bring on competing briefs. So a competing brief is two buyers with the same brief. So what that means is that when somebody chooses to engage with a professional buyer's agency, if they engage with Coast and they're 3, 2 and 2 and they want dual living and they want to be purchasing in Mumbai, the team will collectively help the lead buyer's agent secure that property before we will engage another buyer that's also looking for a 3, 2 and 2 dual living in Palmwoods. So we understand that there's more of a database model out there for some others, but let's not talk to the competition. They can run their own race. But having a team that are all dedicated, we call it a strategic alliance. And it's simply the team is there to be able to support one another to achieve the best result possible for our client. So countless times I'm unable to get to an open home, you're at the open home for me. We've got an upcoming auction, I'm meant to be bidding, but I'm away, Simon's bidding on my behalf.
Yep.
Whether it's inspecting property, sourcing property, bidding for property, putting in an offer, there's no downtime for Coast. How many Christmases have we gone without purchasing a property for someone? Donut. We've purchased a property for someone every single year over Christmas.
I mean, there was a year where I bought 2 or 3 leading up to Christmas, and I was doing building and pests between Christmas and New Year. As Jase has said in a previous podcast, we work when we need to work, and we get properties under contract when we need to. We strike while the iron's hot, for want of a better word. But it's very collaborative, and I think the benefit is that when you get an opportunity quickly, I often say to clients, and this includes off markets, even if you said to me now, with that particular brief, I have that many properties to put in front of you, that will change tomorrow, that will change next week, that will change in a fortnight, because I'm strategically looking for your property, and that uncovers those off markets and pre-markets we've just been talking about. A follow-up, the negotiation is handled professionally. We know who to talk to. We know how to leverage those relationships. So even if it's an off-market, like Jase and I and the team know the language. We've dealt with the agent before. Like we pretty much get to a point like, what's going to get this done?
Yes.
Like we're 30 grand apart. Like how can we work together? I remember I did a negotiation with a Noosa agent 18 months ago, and we had countless nights where we were talking on the phone 9 o'clock at night. That he had an active seller, I had an active buyer, my buyer was in a state, their client was away, and we're just trying to bring it together. Now strategically that took about 10 days to get together, and that was also an off-market opportunity. And we got it together just through let's work on this together. It's come to a conclusion that's beneficial for both parties. So relationships play a key role.
When a seller is selling and when a buyer is buying, the seller is hoping for the best possible result for themselves, and the buyer is hoping to purchase as well as they possibly can.
Well, they want the best possible result for themselves.
Yeah. But quite often the seller nor the buyer are armed with any tools or any information that can support it. So I've had selling agents say, this is what my vendor is seeking, and my feedback has been, that's pretty ambitious. And I've had agents agree with me. So when I've submitted my offer, I've provided my CMA. So here's my comparable market analysis. The 3 properties that I've drawn down on is this one, this one, and this one. The most comparable one is extremely comparable. It's the same size house, block size. It's within 300 metres. It's the same age home. It's a like-for-like property, and that's what this property has sold for, and that's what we would like to purchase your client's property for. Their expectations are 200,000 above that. How did they arrive at that number?
I've showed you how we've arrived at our number. How did your clients arrive at their number?
Correct. And there's been scenarios where, on the flip side, I haven't been aware of a very recent sale that's happened off market with that agent. He's like, now that you're sourcing for this buyer, you wouldn't be aware, but there's been a recent sale within the building. This is what I got for it. My vendors are aware of it, and they're going to draw down on that. I'm like, great, that's information that the general public doesn't happen.
We'll pass it on to our client to make an informed decision. Great session.
So the
off markets and pre-markets.
So we speak about, let's wrap up with this. What pond are you fishing from? Are you fishing from the pond that everyone else is?
That everyone else is fishing from, which has all the online stock. All the I often say, you're going to fish out of the pond, or you're going to go out in the ocean and throw the net. There's just more opportunities.
So if you'd like a larger window of real estate, access to more property, that's what we're here to do, right?
If the networking, the direct contacts, the market intel, and obviously our teamwork, if that appeals to you in terms of getting more pre and off market opportunities, we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Simon.
See you guys.